Good morning, everyone. On Sunday mornings, I have been talking on this text, Opening the Hand of Thought. This is written by my teacher, Okumura Roshi. And the basic or important part of this book was written in the early 70s. That means around the time I started to practice with my teacher. So the teaching in this book is what I have been studying and practicing based on. So for the people who practice here with me, I recommend to read this book. Anyway, in my record, this is the 150th talk on this book. And still I'm page 98. So I talk usually a paragraph by paragraph. And his writing is very kind of understandable. He discuss about the Buddhist teachings, but try not to use the technical terms of Buddhist philosophy. So we think his writing is understandable. But what he's talking is not so easy to understand the thing. So this is a kind of a tricky part. So what in my talk, what I have been doing is to translate his easy to understand writing, style of writing to more kind of a Buddhist philosophical context. Because people who practice with me and listen to my talk, pretty much very intellectual people. So even though people are not so familiar with Buddhist technical terms, I think people can understand what he's talking, or what Buddha taught, or what Mahayana Buddhism teaches, or even Dogen. So let me read one paragraph. If you have this text, page 98, third paragraph. Let me read this paragraph. The scripture says of interdependence. Because this exists, that exists. Because this arises, that arises. But what does this mean? It means that all concrete entities occur in accordance with various conditions. That they always happen based on conditions and never apart from or separate from such factors. And that all abstract entities have meaning because of their mutual relation. Accordingly, what is being said here is that there are no independent substantial entities. That is, no things exist by themselves. This structure refers to what Okumura Roshi quote few paragraphs before, and that quote is this is quote from the Pali Nikaya, and it's also the same sutta is also in the Chinese translation of Agama. So this teaching is quite old, even in the history of Buddhism. and what Buddha taught is about the emptiness and middle way. He says, truly, this is Shakyamuni Buddha, truly seeing the aggregation of the world, the view of non-existence does not arise. Truly seeing the non-substantiality of the world, the view of existence does not arise. The view that all things exist is one extreme. The view that nothing exists is the other extreme. Being apart from these two extremes, the Tathagata teaches the Dharma of the middle way. Because this exists, that exists. Because this arises, that arises. So he is talking, not Shakyamuni is talking about the middle way. And this middle way is between two extreme views. One is called Wu in Chinese or Japanese, and Mu. Wu and Mu. And view of Wu means everything exists. And in this case, everything exists means there's some fixed entity which doesn't change. And Mu, the view of Mu is there's no such things, nothing exists. And Buddha said, the reality is neither Wu nor Mu, but middle way between these two. And Wu, logically speaking, Wu is he, Mu. Means not non-existing. And Mu is he, who. Not Wu. He means negation. So Wu is a negation of Mu. And Mu is a negation of Wu. So one of the definition of the famous word emptiness, or shunyata in Sanskrit, means neither Wu nor Mu. That is what Buddha talking here. So this means emptiness. Means both are negated. And when both are negated, both are, how can I say, supporting each other. It's not a matter of Wu or Mu. Neither Wu nor Mu. And neither Wu nor Mu can mean both Wu and both Mu. And those are four possible possibilities. Wu, Mu, and neither Wu nor Mu. And both Wu and both Mu. Both Wu and Mu. Are those four logical possibilities. And all four logical possibilities are negated. That means the reality we are living, or things happening inside and outside ourselves, is neither Wu nor Mu, or both Wu and Mu, and neither Wu nor Mu. So all the logical, conceptual possibility is negated. That means the reality we are living is cannot be grasped with any concept or logics. That is one meaning of this teaching. But another teaching is if we see that the reality we are living in is something beyond our logical way of thinking can reach, then we can use any of them freely. That means when we talk to someone and who has clinging to the view of mu, then we can say that is not true. That is, we can say u from side of u. But when someone has clinging to another extreme, then we can say it's not. So that is how Buddhas and Buddhist masters and even Zen masters use this kind of a strange logic. They are free from all these kind of conceptual, logical way of thinking when they see the true reality that is called Dharma. This capital D Dharma is reality itself, and reality itself is beyond our thinking. There's no way we can grasp using our conceptual thinking. So our Buddhist teachings doesn't stand on any of those four possible standpoints. We are free, or Buddhist masters are free of those possibilities. Therefore, depending upon to whom they are talking, they can use any of these possibilities to help the person become free from their clinging, the person's clinging. That teachers can say something opposite. Or sometimes, as the koan story that I introduced last Sunday, when someone asked, please tell something to me about the reality beyond thinking, or beyond reach of conceptual thinking. Then the master said, today I have a headache, so ask to go and ask someone else. So the master rejected to say anything. And when the monk asked to another person, he said, now today I'm headache, so I couldn't talk with you. And he went to another person, he said the same thing. So one way is to reject to answer. And this is not only the master did, even Shakyamuni did. When someone asked, some of his students asked certain kind of metaphysical questions, Buddha didn't answer. He rejected to answer. And there are 14 that kind of questions Buddha didn't give answers. That is my understanding of what Buddha said in this Pali Nikaya. And Okumura Roshi says, he quote again the last sentence, that is, because this exists, that exists, because this arises, that arises. And he said, but what does this mean? What this means? This means A and B. And it said, because A exists, B exists. That means A and B are relative. And in this case, this U and Mu. U and Mu are relative. If there's no Mu, and then there's no U. And if there is no U, there's no Mu. Mu and U negate each other, and yet if we don't have both idea or concept, there's no such things U without Mu, and Mu without U. That is what relative, A and B are relative means. So they negate each other, and yet without something which negates A, even A cannot be said. I think that is logically correct. And we can put this any dichotomy within other A and B, like good and bad, like and dislike, or meaningful or meaningless. So what Okumura Roshi is saying is about two kinds of existence. One is, he said, all concrete entities. Concrete entities means something which we can see, or we can touch, we can taste or hear, something concrete we can experience. And next one is all abstract entities. Abstract entities means we cannot see with our eyes, or hear with our ears, or smell with our nose. But these abstract entities can be the object of our mind. So in which there are 6 sense organs, that is ear, eye, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The 6th is shin, or mind. And in the case of eye, the object of eye is color or shape. And each sense organ has its own object. And the object of mind is those abstract entities, such as good and bad. We cannot hear or say good and bad, but when we hear something, we think whether this is good or bad. So good and bad cannot be the object of our eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. But good and bad is the object of our mind, or some abstract entities such as love, or hate, or justice, all that kind of things are object of our mind. And also the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We cannot see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we can see, 1 person, 2 people, or 3 people. But our eyes doesn't say these are 3, but when we receive the stimulation from outside through our eye, and it became perception. And when within our mind, we see the perception, and our mind think there are 3 people. So the number, those 3, does not exist outside of our mind. But those numbers are the object of our mind. The numbers are object of our mind. Those are what Okumura Roshi meant when he said abstract entities. That is object of our mind. And he said those things we can sense using our sense organs occur in accordance with various conditions. That means no concrete things can occur or happen or exist without causes and conditions, or supported by others. That is what interdependent origination means in Mahayana teaching. So there's nothing can exist as a result of something, and there are some causes. So there is a causality. So causality is the relation between this thing. For example, this is a flower. Then the cause of the flower is seed. So seed and flower or fruits are within cause and result. Without cause, there's no flowers. So in order to flower exist as a flower, we need some cause. And also conditions means even the seed is planted, if there's no sunlight or humidity or certain nutrition, the seed cannot sprout and grow. So all those conditions which support these seeds to sprout and grow, flower cannot exist. So all those concrete things can exist because of the relation with cause and conditions. That is what Okumura Roshi meant. So all beings, all things are existing within the relation, or we can say there's nothing beside those relations. That is about the concrete things, and also about the abstract things. As I said, good cannot be exist or can have meaning without bad, or success cannot have meaning without failure. So all words and concept has opposition, and these two are negate. As I said, U and Mu, about U and Mu, these two are, as in dichotomies, negate each other. If this is good, that means this is not bad, and if this is bad, then this is not good. That is how we think and how the word and concept works. That means word and concept kind of separate the reality into two sides. That is what dichotomy or duality means. And this can be done by our mind or within our mind. There's no good and bad if there's no person who has mind. So that is the meaning of that, this dichotomy. Each concept or word needs something opposite, and so that means this thing and opposite thing, A and B, negate each other and yet support each other. Without other, this cannot exist. That is two sides of relativity or interdependence. And this is how Okumura Roshi interprets what Buddha taught in the Nikaya. But strictly speaking, this is not correct. I mean, Shakyamuni Buddha in the Pali Nikaya, or Chinese translation of Agama, Shakyamuni never says such interdependence. To me, this is kind of an interesting point, and we need to understand the history of Buddhist philosophy. This teaching and this writing by Okumura Roshi is this is a English translation of what he wrote in this booklet. This is a tiny, booklet published by the headquarters of Soto Zen School in Japan. So this is written for common people who are interested in Zazen, and Okumura Roshi tried to explain the meaning of the Zazen practice in terms of modern civilization. So this is not a scholastic writing. So that was not Okumura Roshi's purpose to write this, booklet. That means it's really correct as a kind of a scholastic writing. So, but when we study the Buddhist teachings, at least when I work on translation, I need to understand the exact meaning of what he quotes and what he is saying. And these, to me, these two are not really connected. That means, this quote from Pali Nikaya, as I said before, is origin of what Mahayana teachings, or particularly Nagarjuna is one of the most important philosophers of Mahayana Buddhism. And how Okumura Roshi interpret this teaching is based on Nagarjuna's teaching, not Shakyamuni's. But the source or origin of what Nagarjuna taught about interdependent origination is this saying of Shakyamuni Buddha. So it's kind of important to me to see the difference between what Shakyamuni said and how Nagarjuna interpreted. That means when this quote from, I said from Pali Nikaya, but this translation is from Chinese translation of Agama. And this, the last part, because this exists, that exists, because this arises, that arises, does not exist in Pali. It's only in Chinese translation. So Okumura Roshi quote from Chinese translation. And in the Pali original, after Buddha said about the middle way, let me read. This is English translation from Pali Nikaya. What Okumura Roshi quote is, all exist, Kachana. Kachana is the person Buddha is talking to. All exist. This is one extreme. All does not exist. This is the second extreme. Without veering, V-E-E-R, veering toward either of these extremes, the Tathagata teaches the Dharma by the middle. Middle is this middle. So this is what Okumura Roshi quote. And until here, it is exactly the same. But in Pali, there's no, because this exists, that exists. Because this arises, that arises. There's no this phrase. But Pali Nikaya continues after by the middle. Buddha said, with ignorance as condition, volitional formation comes to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness and continue until such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. And this is a kind of a, how can I say, abbreviation of 12 links of causation. 12 links. This teaching is very important and well known. So if you read any Buddhist book about Buddha's teaching, I think you will find this teaching, 12 links. That is, in this teaching, Buddha taught about the cause of suffering. The final one, 12th, is in this translation, whole mass of suffering. So this is suffering. Final result of cause and result is suffering. That is what Buddha taught in Four Noble Truths. Everything is suffering. And he pursued what is the cause of suffering. And so 11th is birth. That is what Buddha said. Please.
Fuji-san, you said whole mass of suffering?
Yeah. That means a collection of suffering. Everything is suffering. Our life is all suffering. And what Buddha taught is the cause of those all sufferings is birth. Because we are born, we experience suffering. And I don't have time to talk about each one of them, but the first cause is ignorance. And the second is formation. And the third is consciousness. Anyway, so these are the cause and result, cause and result, cause and result, and cause and result. So what Buddha taught in these 12 links of causation is the first cause of suffering within our life is ignorance. So therefore, when we eliminate ignorance, then formation ceases to be. And when formation ceases to be, consciousness ceases to be. And when birth ceases to be, then suffering ceases to be. That is a teaching. So Buddha, I think as an order, Buddha pursue or seek the cause of suffering, and he ditched ignorance. And from opposite side, opposite way, when ignorance is cease to be, second one is cease to be. Therefore, suffering is cease to be. So when we study these 12 links of causation, we see from this way and this way. That is what this saying, because this exists, that exists, means this and that, and this and that. Because birth exists, suffering exists. And because when birth doesn't exist, suffering also doesn't exist. That is what this exists, that exists. And because this arises, that arises. And also negation, when this ceases to be, that ceases to be. So this is what Buddha taught, and what Buddha mentions when in the Pali Nikaya. And the different, and this teaching is called dependent origination. That means suffering cannot exist by itself. Suffering can exist because of the cause, that is birth, in Buddha's teaching. That means if we are not born, we don't experience suffering. I think logically this is really true. So this is called dependent origination. This is one of the very important teaching of Shakyamuni. And in this case, cause, the result, the direction of cause and result is one way. That means suffering is a result of birth, and formation is result of ignorance. So ignorance, formation is caused by ignorance. But we cannot say ignorance is caused by formation. So this is always one way. Cause and the relation between cause and result is one way. That's why in English we call this dependent origination. But in Mahayana teaching, this teaching is called interdependence. Origination. Actually, the original Sanskrit word or Pali word is the same. But as an interpretation of this teaching, in early Buddhism, this is called dependent origination. This cannot be called interdependence. But in the case of Mahayana teaching, this needs to be called interdependence, not dependence. As he said, not he, but he means Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna said, A and B are interdependent. Not only B is caused by A, but A and B can exist because they support each other and negate each other. That's why this is called interdependence. So, strictly speaking, what Okumura Roshi is talking, if this is an interpretation or his comment on what Buddha taught, this is not correct. But when we put Nagarjuna's or Madhyamika school's teaching between Shakyamuni Buddha and Okumura Roshi, then this makes sense. And this is as comments or interpretation of what Nagarjuna taught about interdependence origination, then what Okumura Roshi is saying here is correct. So if we study Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy in details, there are many this kind of, in a sense, mistaken or abbreviation happens, but that is not the purpose of what Okumura Roshi, the purpose of Okumura Roshi writing in this book. So I don't think this is mistaken, but strictly speaking, this is not correct. That is what I have to say this morning. But this difference is really important to understand the nature of Mahayana teaching and how Mahayana teaching is, in a sense, different from early Buddhist teaching. And yet there is a relation. So this is one example of cause and result. And in the history of Buddhist philosophy, this has happened. This is a kind of a development of Buddhist philosophy. So what Okumura Roshi is saying, not only Okumura Roshi, but Nagarjuna is said, is because this exists, that exists, because this arises, that arises, and also because this perish, that perish. In the Mahayana teaching, these sayings, take this saying out in the context of this 12 links of causation, but talks about everything. This and that can be anything, all existence, such as, the grass and water, and, this is a pair of eyeglasses, and this 5 skandhas as Shōhaku. All are within this structure of teaching. And that is what emptiness means. Nagarjuna's teaching is based on Prajna Paramita Sutras. And one of the earliest sutra in the group of Prajna Paramita Sutras. Prajna Paramita Sutras is a huge group of Mahayana sutras, all called Prajna Paramita. And in Chinese translation, it has 600 volumes. So it's not possible to read the entire sutras. But this, one of the earliest Prajna Paramita Sutra, that is called Diamond Sutra. And scholars call this Diamond Sutra as oldest, one of the oldest, because within this Diamond Sutra, the concept or expression or term emptiness does not exist yet. So this word emptiness or shunyata or ku is coined later than Diamond Sutra. But without using this Buddhist technical term emptiness, the Diamond Sutra express the same reality. And at the very end of the Diamond Sutra, there is a very well-known verse. That is, my translation from Chinese is as follows. This is Chinese. All conditioned things, or existence, are conditioned things means things caused by other things, which doesn't exist without relation with others. That is what conditioned means. So all conditioned things are like a dream, a phantom, a bubble, a shadow, like a dewdrop, also like a flash of lightning. We should see them thus. This is what the verse in the Diamond Sutra says. And those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things are kind of examples of emptiness and examples of the things which cannot exist without relation with others. And also that means it has no substance. And also it's impermanent. For example, a dream of phantom and bubbles are examples of no self, no fixed self. When we have a dream, dreams seems like real thing, but when we wake up, it's all disappeared, and we see that there's no substance in things happening in our dream. And the phantom is the same, phantom or illusion is the same thing. we see things with our eyes or within our mind, but that doesn't really exist. Or bubble, I really like the example of bubble. This is most understandable to me, so I often use the example of a bubble. And I think we all know what bubble is. Bubble appeared from in the bottom of the water, and it seems there are until they reach the surface of the water. And when it reached the surface, it disappeared. So we think bubbles are existing this period of time, since from the time it appeared in the water, in the bottom of the water, until it reached the top surface of the water. And this is how we usually think, and we don't think this is a mistake. This is how we usually use our words and concept. A bubble appear at this time, and bubble cease to be when it reaches to the surface. But emptiness means, are these bubbles really existing? That means bubbles are, as reality, air packed in the water. Is there something called a bubble beside air and water? I don't think so. Only air and water. So there's no such thing called a bubble. But bubble is a name of the thing happening. It's not existence. To me, this is the most understandable example of emptiness. There's no such thing called a bubble. But as a happening, it's really happening. And the name bubble is the name of the things happening. As a reality, there's no such things called a bubble beside air and water. That is what emptiness means. So emptiness does not mean these things doesn't happen. It's really happening. So the real bubble happening in the water is different from the photo of a bubble. Photo of a bubble is really not existing. It's just imprinted on the paper. There's no actuality in the bubble in the photo. But this is really happening in the water. But if we take a close look at what's really happening, we see there's no such thing called a bubble existing besides air and water. And today we know air, I mean both air and water are the same. Water is a collection of H2O, 2H and 1O. So when we had a kind of experiment when we are middle school student, when we put the electricity there, water separate. These H2H and O separate and become the vapor. So even the water doesn't exist. Water is a collection of these three atoms. Then are these H and O as atoms really exist or not? Maybe not. I don't know much about physics, but atom can also split. So even H or O doesn't really exist. That is what emptiness means. But as when we think using concept and words, we have to say there's one O and two H that makes water. And when the air is a mixture of different kind of atoms. And when air is packed in the water, we call it a bubble. In that sense means as a conventional usage of language, bubble is existing. But as a reality, bubble doesn't exist. So bubble has two sides, U and Mu. It's conventionally speaking, it's there. And yet, as a reality, it's not there. That is what emptiness means. That is means we cannot grasp with either existence and non-existence. They are both and neither. So when we interpret in this way, and that means even before Nagarjuna, Mahayana Buddhist interpret what Buddha taught about when because this arise, that arise, and when that cease, this cease. In a more kind of a what is the word? Common way, not only about the cause and result of suffering, but they apply this teaching in each and every being. That is the difference between Buddha's teaching, Shakyamuni's teaching in the early Buddhism, and Mahayana Buddhist teaching. So, and in Mahayana teaching, Zen Buddhism is a part of Mahayana Buddhism. So, when we understand, this teaching came from Shakyamuni, originally came from Shakyamuni, but interpreted by the Mahayana Buddhists such as Nagarjuna. And because our tradition, so-called Soto Zen, came from Japanese Zen master Dogen, we understand this teaching as a reality based on that kind of, how can I say, lineage or history. That is what I have to say today. It's already 11:05. Any question or comments, please?
I'm not sure I hung on to all of this, but as I understand it, the 12 causes and effects, that's from the Buddha. And it goes one direction, according to him, the idea is, and that is called dependent origination. And then the other perspective is from Nagarjuna, or from that, his ambience, not only him, and turned into Mahayana Buddhism, and that's the interdependent origination.
Yeah.
And in the example of the seed and the flower, I can understand that with the Buddha he's saying that like a seed produces a plant, which produces a flower, which produces a fruit, which produces a seed. And the Buddha was saying that a seed doesn't produce a flower directly, and also a plant doesn't produce a seed, it doesn't go backwards, that the process has it. And that in Mahayana Buddhism, though, they're saying the whole thing's really circular. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes.
Sort of. And so it seems like the 12 causalities of suffering, it's like one could see it as a hierarchy or a progression, but in fact it perhaps even the Buddha would have thought that it's circular, or no, because
when we did read the text of early Buddhist teaching, such as the Pali Nikaya, it's only said one direction. And he is talking about particular cause to the particular result. So he's only talking about what is the cause of our suffering and how we can become free from suffering. That's only thing Buddha taught. He doesn't discuss about, the cause and result of any other things. But Mahayana Buddhists apply this cause and result or causality to much broader perspective. So Mahayana Buddhist doesn't negate what Buddha taught. But Mahayana Buddhist thought this understanding of interdependent origination is helpful to see, suffering is not substantial. Suffering is caused by something else. So it is possible to become free from suffering.
It's more like a metaphysical principle that you can apply and use. And whereas the Buddha was more like a moral cause and effect.
Please.
Thank you. I'm hesitant to ask this question, but it's what I'm perplexed by. That when you talk about causation, on the one hand, some of the examples are science. In other words, the seed and the flower happen whether we believe that they're going to happen or not. And yet, and other concepts are based on language and our understanding of language. And so I was thinking when you're going through the 12 that you did about birth and then suffering, and thinking about all sentient beings, and my dog, for instance, who doesn't suffer in the way that sentient beings with language suffer. And so I guess it's just a question about those two types of causation, scientific causation and language causation, that is more than just birth. If somebody were born and never had language, would they suffer in the same way that the Buddha is talking about? So I'm not trying to over-intellectualize, I just want to make sure I understand this in a fuller way.
I don't really understand the point of really difference between scientific natural cause and result and suffering or causation based on language. Could someone explain, please?
Earlier in your talk, you mentioned concrete entities and abstract entities. So I think that might be related to what you're asking, because the scientific types of causation are concrete entities, and the ones that involve language.
And it has nothing to do with our thinking or understanding.
And then the ones that have to do with language are more abstract, they have to do with concepts. Is that what you're
I see, I
an
understand.
understanding of language, yes.
So you are saying these two are different?
Yes.
Are these
In
different?
terms of suffering, in terms of how beings suffer.
When Buddha talk about suffering, it's a certain particular suffering probably only human beings experience. Maybe water doesn't experience suffering, or maybe dogs or cats or birds experience some suffering, but it might be different from human beings. So in that sense, that is difference. But I think the point of Okumura Roshi is suffering can have meaning with something which is not suffering. I think that is a point. That means, how can I say, the opposition of suffering is sukha, dukkha and sukha. What is the opposition of suffering in English? Happiness? Bliss? Happiness? Or happiness and unhappiness is easier. Happiness can exist, or can we think of happiness only we know and compare with unhappiness. That is Okumura Roshi's point. So this and cause and result in the natural world is difference. That is true, I think. That's why Okumura Roshi said two different things. So I think what you said is correct. These are two different things. But what is the point of your question?
I think the point was, does suffering exist outside of language? And I really, so if you say birth and then suffering, that doesn't seem true if I think of a dog. But if I think of humans, it's birth and then learning concepts and language that produce suffering. And I'm asking if that is a false interpretation or a correct interpretation.
You mean that suffering exists without thinking?
Yes.
Beyond our thinking. Suffering is really, that means suffering has substance. Could you answer?
I'm thinking of an example. For example, some animals like elephants or other animals, they're born and then they lose their mother. I think they suffer. I
agree, but I don't think it's the suffering that the Buddha was addressing. In other words, if the seed does not germinate and so that there are flowers and we all starve, we will all suffer. But when I think of the goal of meditation and zazen, it is a more to work past the mental suffering, the mental concepts, and that's what I'm kind of groping with.
Couldn't you argue that the elephant is suffering mental suffering? Even though they don't have language, they can still make a model of the world in their head, and still, Pavlov's dog, or whatever, they can still build up dependencies on stuff,
I understand that. I hear your point. My question is just about the relationship of language and understanding good and bad, and those. I'm asking about how Buddha was looking at the nature of suffering, whether it included both or whether it was more focused on concepts.
When Buddha said the original cause of suffering is ignorance, then it seems what he's talking about is ignorance means we don't see the true nature of all beings. We mistakenly interpret what we experience. That causes clinging to that when we experience encountering with things or some kind of experiences, because we don't have wisdom, because of our ignorance of true nature, our life becomes suffering. I think that is what Buddha taught. but I'm not sure what is the connection between your question and what Buddha taught. Could you have something?
In the 12 links, the formations that ignorance gives rise to, do those include mental formations?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that is a connection with what you're asking, that it's that our concepts and sort of language. So
in the case of Buddha's teaching, I think this is human kind of suffering. Because of our lack of our wisdom. But of course, I think last week we bought 2 pots of chrysanthemum, and we didn't plant them. So yesterday evening I saw those chrysanthemum plant almost dead. So I dig a hole and plant it. I think they suffered, whether we don't think they know they are suffering.
And you suffered.
Yeah, I think they suffer. So suffering is there, even if I don't think, and even if I don't think plant knows the word or concept of suffering, but they really suffer. So in that sense, suffering exists outside, even when we don't think, or even the plant don't have the concept or dichotomy between suffering and happiness. Of course, there are, joyful condition and not joyful condition, even for the plants or animals. This can be an answer to your question. But what Buddha talking is our particular way of suffering human beings because of lack of wisdom, that is ignorance. And when we have wisdom, or when we become free from ignorance, then we can be released from this suffering. But the plants continue to suffer until someone gives more water. Well, I'm sorry. Any other question or comment?